Well, warm welcome to everybody. My name is Jonathan Gustin, and on behalf of Purpose Guides Institute, the organization that's hosting this Remembrance gathering, um, so wonderful to have you here, including if you're listening to the recording, you are part of this circle. So as we let folks come in from the waiting room, I'm going to light a candle and incense in honor of Joanna. Lead a little 2-minute meditation. Oh, the fan is blowing it out. Okay, here we go. So wherever you are right now on the planet, I invite you to feel your feet on the ground, touching the earth, that no matter where we are, our feet are connecting to and with one another. And bringing into our bodies, our hearts, and our minds an image of beloved Joanna Macy. Wherever she is, however she is, breathing with Joanna's soul, calling out to her, all 760 of us so far, to dwell amongst us and between us and in us. And allowing ourselves to become quiet, still, silent. So still, perhaps, that Joanna's voice or essence speaks to us. Just resting together for another minute in the silence and stillness of the most eloquent way of expressing our gratitude for our friend. Again, my name is Jonathan. Excuse me. I met Joanna a little over 30 years ago. She was my professor at California Institute of Integral Studies. Took a workshop with her and promptly fell in love. Never stopped, along with 10,000 others. And then we became friends. We started to co-teach together, first live in person at the Unitarian Universalist Church in San Francisco, a number of events, and then on Zoom. And we became friends, and we'd just have dinners and lunches and coffees, and it was a real treat for me to be with her. And the gratitude, the remembrance that I want to bring and presence is that of gratitude. So I'm going to start with a quote and a memory. So this is Joanna's words. In the face of impermanence and death, it takes courage to love the things of this world and to believe that praising them is our noblest calling. Gratitude is liberating. It is subversive. It helps us to realize that we are sufficient, and that realization frees us. I witnessed this subversive practice in action over and over again on those walks from her house to the coffee shop or diner. And those walks were always quite slow, not only because towards the end Joanna was quite elderly, but because each walk tended to be an unannounced praise walk. We'd stop periodically, she would stop and then I would stop with her, and Joanna would turn to some leaves of a tree or a plant or a flower, and she would address these entities, these life forms, and say something like, "Oh, aren't you so beautiful?" And her face would light up with this gorgeous smile, beaming, and a perfume of awe would emanate from her for the life form, that she was addressing. She would stand there, sometimes just going, "Ah," sighing, gasping, touching the plant, exuding admiration, pleasure, and even ecstasy. In the privacy of my own head, I would sometimes think, gosh, I need a cigarette after watching this sensual embrace between Joanna and some leaves. As a result of getting this front row seat, I aspire to that kind of ripe gratitude. There's a word in my teaching work from Aristotle that I use quite often. It's entelechy. It means a thing's fruition. Aristotle said the entelechy of an acorn is an oak. And for me, Joanna was an example that such a thing can happen with a human being, which isn't to say perfection or equanimous at every moment. I experienced her anger directly at me. I experienced one time going upstairs to see her, and she was just in tears, just devastated, telling me she lost her purpose, not for long. So it wasn't perfection, but it was the sense of a whole human being blossoming or fruiting, at least to me. and maybe for another 10,000 people. So that is my remembrance, the power, the majesty of gratitude, fully and wholly lived. And Jane Hirschfield will be offering us a poem.
So I am very grateful to be here, coming to you from the hem of Mount Tamalpais in the San Francisco Bay Area. And Jonathan asked me to begin and then later end this celebration of Joanna's life and work and immense river of wisdom and encouragement that she brought to this world's past, present, and future, and to do that with poems. So I wanted, as he has, to begin with her own words. And first, this thought. If the world is to be healed through human efforts, I am convinced it will be by ordinary people, people whose love for this life is greater than their fear. And so, in that spirit, I begin first with her translation. I'll end later with a poem of my own, but I wanted to start with one of the translations she did with Anita Barrows of Rilke. And in the introduction, she asks, as is relevant to any moment in the world's history, and particularly now, how to praise in a time of rampant horror. And then later in the introduction, she says, it's interesting, it's the same sentence in this context as Jonathan gave us in another. She says, what gives the Duino elegies and sonnets to Orpheus their visceral potency is Rilke's determination to cherish life in direct confrontation with what robs us of life. In the face of impermanence and death, it takes courage to love the things of this world and to believe that praising them is our noblest calling. Rilke's is not a conditional courage dependent on an afterlife, nor is it a stoic courage keeping a stiff upper lip when shattered by loss. It is courage born of the ever unexpected discovery that acceptance yields an expansion of being. So here's the 21st sonnet to Orpheus, translated by Joanna with Anita Barrows. Sing, my heart, the gardens you never walked, like gardens sealed in glass balls unreachable. Sing the waters and roses of Isfahan and Shiraz, praise them, lush beyond compare. Swear, my heart, that you will never give them up, that the figs they ripened for you, that you could tell by its fragrance each blossoming branch. Don't imagine you could ever let them go once they made the daring choice to be. Like a silken thread, you entered the weaving. Whatever image you take within you deeply, even for a moment in a lifetime of pain, see how it reveals the whole, the great tapestry.
Peggy and Jack.
Yes. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Jack. I am Joanna's middle child, second son, and it is such a great honor to join you all today and appreciate being able to share a few brief memories and thoughts, which does feel like a challenge with over 6.5 decades to choose from. And it does feel like understatement to say that I have been awed, uh, inspired, amazed, and challenged by my mom's many amazing qualities. So, a few little memories. At first, highlighting her adventurousness, openness to new experience, adaptiveness in the way that she moved her family with us kids, uh, three of them, into so many different homes, countries, cultures, schools, creating life anew again and again, expressing excitement with the opportunity to explore new places and make new connections, while keeping her struggles with the loss of what she left each place from us kids, which I didn't fully appreciate until I read her memoir many years later. And I have a memory of looking out of a plane window over a foreign landscape of a vast jumble of brown buildings spreading out below me, and hearing my mom's gentle voice over me saying, "That's our new home." With a sense of calm comfort, hopeful anticipation, I stared in wonder at the city of Lagos, Nigeria, that was to be the fifth country to live in at the age of 10. Another set of qualities I want to highlight is her silliness, playfulness, audacious fun, almost no bounds at times, when we would play many different games. But one that became a Thanksgiving tradition after we returned to Washington, D.C. from 5 years abroad was the game of hares and hounds. And she would lead the group of hares with my sister Peggy and the rest, half the group of friends joining us. And they would head down the street tying red ribbons on tree branches, fence posts, car windows, you name it. And when we found one, and anyone, they kept going. And then after they did that, a group of hounds, which included my dad and I, would follow, and we would be howling as we ran down the street, finding a red ribbon and then looking for another one. And I had to look kind of hard, and they were really some pretty silly places, maybe even hanging under a car. But almost every time, at some point, we would find a red ribbon on the door of a house. And the only way to see the next one might be to knock on the door of this friend's house and go into their house where they're having Thanksgiving, like out their backyard, around the house. And in DC, we would end up going up the hill behind our house to the National Cathedral, this vast place, into the cathedral, through the cathedral. We were still howling as hounds, out into the back, into the gardens, and eventually finding the hares huddled and hiding as we just hooted and howled in joy. And there was kind of no limit to the fun that she could have playing these games. And there's so many other examples of her creativity. Like in Easter, she would make up these amazing clues that would take us throughout their house and to all these different objects that we collected from around the world. But a third thing I want to highlight is that she and I really shared and bonded a lot since going back to the 1970s around exploring and engaging the environmental crises that we're facing. And I just was amazed at how willing, fearless, and able she was, hearing some scary news that I might have brought to her attention. And she just dived headfirst in, learning so much. And then is like organizing groups, leading protests, testifying in public hearings. And she really took it in so deeply. Seeing her in the 70s grapple with despair and then put it out to the world in writing. And then she's leading workshops for people to feel and express this despair and come out somehow feeling empowered. Just seemed kind of unbelievable to me. But I was able to experience one of those in the early years while I was still in college. But then to see this work continually evolve and expand was really amazing. And I have to admit, I felt a little jealous missing out on being with all these amazing people, activists that she recounted from around the world. So I was excited and a little surprised that when she, about a decade ago, invited me to join a group of 10 full time accomplished activists, many running organizations that had started meeting with her every month, just to do deep exploration. And I was like, "You want me to come?" You know, being a little nepotism, are you? No, no, no. You're an environmental leader too. It's like, okay. Even though I was, San Francisco environment employee, okay, I'll take that. And it was really great being with this group for the last decade and just sharing deeply in many different ways, and to have her channel the wisdom, her love of the world, and the way she would just behold everyone in the group. Uh, and she shared the Shambhala Warrior, which the group kind of identified with, and they recently came out with, pick up, I don't think it is, the this book. But I want to say that right up until before she died, the last meeting that she was in was 4 days before she broke her hip. And that led to her passing 5 weeks later. In that meeting, a member of the group was sharing how concerned about how they could best support somebody. And Joanna put her intense gaze, which was one eye in the last years that she could see through, her intense gaze, and she said, "You matter." Really kind of simple. And it's like, oh, okay. And he's like talking more. And then she stops and said, "Did you hear me?" She said emphatically, "You matter." And 2 months after that meeting, this person has shared that that message was delivered in such a powerful way that she does. That person has been so moved and has been reverberating in that person that they feel they are inhabiting that being, counting, mattering more than ever. And it's just, to the end, she just has such a strong, loving presence that when she looked at me, I just felt so deeply loved. And I just want to say her gratitude and love just kept increasing in her final years. So I deeply miss seeing her shining, alive face and her sweet voice, her loving touch, and I will carry with me her love and gratitude forever. Thank you. Now it's Peggy's turn.
Hi, I'm Peggy, Joanna's daughter. Um, Sort of following on some of the stories Jack was telling, I wanted to highlight her playfulness and silliness. Um, she loved playing games. After like a dinner party, when we were done with the food, she liked the game where you send somebody out of the room, and those of you in the room choose an adverb, and then the person comes back in and says, Joanna, talk to Jack in this way. And she was extremely theatrical. Of course, as her daughter, I thought super over the top. But she loved that game and it was hilarious. She also really liked charades. I remember a particularly embarrassing moment where we played a version where one team gives clues to another team, and she got the joy of sex. And instead of like 3 words, first word is little, she did the whole picture, and did kind of like a sensuous thing. So, of course, as a teen or whatever I was, that was horrifying. We played a lot of like paper and pen things. One, I think it's called Exquisite Corpse, where you kind of accordion style fold a paper and then one person draws the head and then you pass it to the next person who like draws the torso. And in the end, you have, a very strange kind of hybrid creature. And, of course, we grew up screen time. So, if you were waiting in a doctor's office, she would have like brought a bag of Legos, or she'd get out a paper and draw a squiggle and then hand it to me. And then with a different color pen, I would turn the squiggle into a picture of something. And we just go back and forth with that. And I remember she would do that with the grandkids too. In a car, we would play coffee pot. So the one person would think of a verb and then substitute the word coffee pot. So then my mom might say, "Well, did you have to learn how to coffee pot? You know, you had to say the word coffee pot." So no, I didn't have to learn how to. Are you coffee potting right now? So she loved that. Um, for my dad's 50th birthday, we had a Renaissance party. This is my dad and my mom at this Renaissance party. And then this is my mom and me. So we were all dressed up. And I think she and I did like recited some French piece from a French play. And they made like actual minced meat pie, the kind, you know, that has meat, I guess, in it. Um, and then another really fun memory is I don't know where we were going, but as Jack said, we traveled so much. There was a time we were in the airport and we must have had a while between flights. And oh, this is Helen. This is her animal. That's Lucy the goose. Um, and because, you know, we had time to kill, she just decided we would start sprinting. Because if you're sprinting in an airport, everyone thinks you missed your plane and they like, you know, they step aside, they start practically cheering you on. And so it just so cracked me up. It was so outrageous and fun and unexpected. Um, and uh, another thing I want to point out is how Jonathan was mentioning her like connection to animals, plants, inanimate objects. Um, she had a tree that she named Masjid. We talked about how great he looked that day. Uh, Talking to flowers, aren't you beautiful today? Like, um, walking with her was a little bit like walking a dog, like stop, sniff. But with her, it's stop, look. Um, she really liked her stuffed animal, Helen. This is Helen, and I have a picture of her with Helen from maybe like 30 years ago with my dad. And she also had a stuffed penguin in this one. Um, and she talked to Helen. Um, she At one house, there were wasps in the porch, and there's a lot of discussion of how to get rid of them. And she wrote a little note to the wasps, you know, in English, and then put the note up high, like at their level, that just politely asked them to maybe go somewhere else. And then I found a photo of a note she wrote to ants. And then this one she put really close to the floor, and I thought I'd share it with you. Dear wee ants, we respect your right to live. However, this kitchen is not the place for you. We implore you to choose to live in our big yard, where it has many plants and roots and decaying bodies to eat. Blessings on you, J.R. Macy. She actually, and then she used, you know, her kind of letterhead thing. It was very formal, actually. Um, and she also had a running joke about her shoehorn, which really helped her get her shoes on. Some days the shoehorn was almost like a sacred object. Maybe it should, so helpful, magical. Maybe it should go on her altar, really. Other days, she said it was like an important archaeological object that, you know, that has been found in archaeological sites, and that actually shoes might have been invented in order to make use of this special shoehorn. So she just had like, she was just always thinking and often in these really funny ways. Um, and I connected with her a lot around humor, and um, I think we both really liked it when I made when I made her laugh. So in the last month or so of her life, there was somebody on her schedule with an unusual name, and like 10 minutes later, in a very serious voice, she said, "Are you sad that I didn't name you that?" And so then we just played along. I said, "Yeah, you know, I've actually been doing a lot of therapy around that, and I'm processing it, but I think I'm kind of coming to terms that you did name me that very unusual name. And she just played along like, does the therapist think I need to join you in a kind of family thing? So we just like sort of deadpan and cracking each other up. Um, very original. Um, let's see, I had one other, this is a picture of her pretending to be eaten by this, like, whatever that is, agave plant or something. And then this is her looking at a turtle. It's like here. She just loved animals. And when we lived in Nigeria, we one day we got home from school, Jack and I and Chris, and she had gotten a baby baboon, who we later really became an important part of our family. He was named Claude, but that first day was very chaotic, and um, uh, but she she just created a very fun, adventure-filled kind of childhood, and just savoring and uh, yeah, modeling kind of living the moment to its max. Okay, lastly, I wanted to read a poem I shared at her at her burial. It's called Edda's Elegy by Maureen Seaton. This is where the poem holds its breath, where the usable truth sways, sorrowing. And the people sway with the truth of it. And this is where the poem enters the dark. This is where the book closes and the clock opens and the clock closes and the book opens to song. So the snow geese murmur and the coyote swaggers along the aspens. This is where the geese fly unabashedly out and the sky turns white and wild with sound. This is where tumult, this is where prophecy, this is where the poem repents of language. This is where the poem enters silence, where the child holds the book in her lap, whose pages are aflame with life, whose song sways with usable truth, sorrowing. This is where the poem holds its breath. This is where the poem enters the dark. This is where it leaps wild about the child, where the snow sees the seamless sky. And the universe splits open for one poem, the way a life lived calls on us to praise it. That's it for me.
So thank you, Jonathan. And I most especially, though, want to thank Peggy and Jack bringing us into the intimacy of the family. And her imagination, outrageousness, her passion, her mischief making. It's just so beautiful. And yes, the book closes and it opens. Yeah. I also want to thank Stephanie Kaza and Wendy Johnson, both of whom worked so closely with Joanna and who was a bridge. After my heart surgery, and I couldn't get to Berkeley, in keeping me informed about Joanna's arc into the great space of death. Joanna often said, "We are in a space without a map." I think it was her whole life and how she related to the greater world, but also her mischievousness, her penchant for surprise was always about groundlessness. It was always, as far as I experienced in my 40 years of being her friend, it was mapless. She was the sort of supreme navigator of this maplessness, and the kind of openness that allows for the imagination to push past the constraints that certainty actually forces us into the kind of a small box. And she just jumped out of that box again and again and again. And she saw so clearly that we're in a time of great churn, that even as the nuclear guardianship project developed and all of these amazing endeavors that she was part of, as she moved into being Robai Shin, grandmother's heart, she saw the gravity of the world that had been generated through greed, hatred, and delusion. And that churn also pointed toward the development of turn, what it meant for her to actually, or what we discovered in being her friend, what it was to take the threat coming from churn and turn that threat into possibility. I really came to appreciate Joanna's voice and her vision as a kind of awakening bell for thousands of us, not just in this country, but across the planet. And, you know, I'm a little bit younger than her. And I came to, understand that she always danced at the brink of change and churn, of uncertainty and of possibility. And she was such a caring person, such a kind of bright light. Wendy and Stephanie and made it possible for me to visit her not long before she died. And honestly, Jack and Peggy, she was a riot. Just, she in her description of her this kind of awakening on the train in India, and boy, I can relate to how she felt the sort of oppressive suffering of humanity, where she compared herself to kind of popcorn. Something popped and her insides came out in a very powerful way that we were drawn into, like a very specific force of nature, a person who never held anything back. So I want to just thank you for gathering old friends together. First, it's very nice to see Tara and Matthew and of course Stephanie, and to meet Jack and Peggy for the first time. Because Joanna was someone who magnetized community, who magnetized connection. And she called us out of our houses, out of the kind of small rooms of our more narrow minds. And she actually provided a kind of bridge for us to feel the possibility of healing for all humans, but all species. So honestly, I love hearing about Joanna's mischievousness and craziness. It's just wonderful, and right up to the end or almost the end. But I honestly feel grief in her absence. We can say, as Thich Nhat Hanh has articulated, a cloud never dies. I mean, her work, her vision, her surprise will live on. But as an embodied being, honestly, I feel the sense of loss in her absence at this time. And part of it is this spirit of non-separation, this sense that she imbued or embodied of, how deep our responsibility is as we meet this groundless world. So, Joanna, I love you. And I thank you for the gift of your life. And also for the extraordinary capacity to sit with not knowing and to give up certainty, seeing certainty as a kind of constraint. And from the book, I was so graciously invited to write forward to. These are Joanna's words. Not knowing rivets our attention on what is happening right now. This present moment is the only time we can act, and the only time, after all, we can wake up. So Joanna called us into action. May we actualize that action with her spirit lighting us up. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Roshi, Joan. So much you said just brought tears. And to all of you here, when I saw you all coming on the screen, oh my gosh, the tenderness of that. I'm just really grateful to be together and grateful to gather on behalf of our beloved Joanna. So I'm Tara Brock, and for me, Joanna had this rare power that as soon as I'd hear her voice, if I wasn't with her over some recording or whatever, I'd immediately feel tears and tenderness. I mean, she'd open me to grief and to love for this living world in a snap, in the same breath. I think that was her superpower, this passion that was so contagious. You probably feel the same. I mean, she evoked caring. I've always felt that if I belong to a spiritual lineage, it's the lover of life lineage, Joanna's lineage. And of course, this is really the lineage, the circle of all beings. Any of you who are a part of Joanna's live teachings, and I know many, many probably were, she created these amazing practices and rituals that evoked this deep recognition that it's true, we belong, of loving connection. I remember my first gathering with her, hundreds of us moving slowly around this large room. And we'd pause in front of a stranger or someone we didn't know, and there'd be silence. And we'd look into that other being's eyes, and she'd invite us to see that basic goodness, the spirit there. And then you'd feel that arising of loving kindness, and then seeing the human vulnerability and feeling compassion. And then finally looking through those eyes and sensing the one vast awareness looking back that we share. And how much peace and equanimity and freedom. And of course, Joan had this genius for helping us realize deep in our bones that kinship includes winged ones and finned ones and leafed ones, that all beings are sentient and precious, and that to bring our world toward healing and balance, we need to learn to listen to our non-human kin. When my mother was 82, she was a contemporary of Joanna's. She joined me for a weekend retreat that Joanna led. And I'll never forget the end of the retreat. My mom kind of had this wry type of smile. She said she hadn't imagined herself speaking as an elephant on behalf of elephants, mourning the loss of her habitats and her homes and her migration paths and members of her herd. But then she paused and she had tears when she said, Tara, I'm enlarged. I'm more in love, with a kind of wonder, which is what Joanna does. Most of you probably know that there are some religious and spiritual traditions that are dedicated to transcendence, getting off the wheel of life. And Joanna's spirited response, how can I get off the wheel? I am the wheel. So I met with Joanna on several of her visits here. I'm in the DC area. I'd like to say we went howling at the National Cathedral. We didn't do that. We had a lot of conversations, and probably the key theme is, what wakes up caring for this living earth? What helps people wake up? And she'd often talk about the greatest danger to our world. It's just not outer destruction and violence. It's that deadening of our hearts and minds, the unwillingness or the inability to feel pain of the world and the toll it takes. So in our talks, it was so clear that waking up, grieving and loving, it's just not solitary. It can't be. That's delusional. That we're in it together. And it's essential to know that we're holding hands with others who care, which is kind of the beauty of what's right here. Because I believe that Joanna really is holding our hands now, always. That she's merged with the stream of our caring. It's a stream that flows through deep time. And it's a stream that's really the hope for our beautiful, our imperiled, our sacred world. So last time I heard her voice was actually in an interview with Krista Tippett. And in the theme of this gathering, I'd like to share some of her closing words to this interview. She says, "We who are alive now, who feel called to love our world, that call has been at the heart of every faith tradition. To love this world, to be grateful for it, to teach ourselves to see beauty, to treasure it, to celebrate it. And when something must pass away, when there's dying, to still be grateful. Every funeral, every memorial is really an offering of thanks. Thanks for the beauty of that life. Thanks for what it gave. And so when we face what seems to be disappearing, some of us feel this need, I know I do, to say, thank you. You are beautiful. Thank you, mountains. Thank you, rivers. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you for your fierce tenderness and courage, your brilliant teachings, your friendship, your faith in the human heart. And we will all keep holding hands. And as you've said, grace happens when we act with others on behalf of our world. And grace happens when we're awake, engaged, lovers of life. Thank you, friends. Blessings.
Lydia Violet Hartunian is my name, and I founded and run the School for the Great Turning. This is my first time trying to speak publicly since Joanna passed, so you will forgive me if I'm crackly. I'm sure some of you are also crackly. Joanna was sometimes crackly. I think she deeply cherished the crackle that could come in moments of vulnerability and tenderness. I think Joanna would want me to set the stage and tell you that I am looking out over the Arctic Ocean right now, that there's these beautiful, jagged mountains that somehow have green all the way to the top because there's so much water. And I think it's important to tell you that Joanna was very connected to the animal, the seal. And today I saw 2 seals and I started singing and they swam over to me. So it feels important to tell you that. Just a handful of the things to appreciate about Joanna. I think something that feels good to honor is that I think for a lot of us, she offered perspective and orientation at the intersection of things that were existentially, emotionally, and politically satisfying. And that is no small feat in this time, and a profound gift to be able to speak and teach and kind of wander and explore at the intersection of what is happening and why are we here. Her profound respect for what despair would have us wrestle with the meaning of all of it is something that so many of us need in this time, because we understand that we are in a profoundly existential moment that requires political acuity and emotional presence, and great compassion and kindness and playfulness. My goodness. To be able to witness a human being who could hold both playfulness in one hand and a capacity to be with what's happening in the world and dance and let those things dance with each other. I think that Joanna offered for some of us, many of us, an opportunity for spiritual presence and practice and orientation without dogma. That is a profound gift. I think that she offered definitions and reclamation of identity that didn't feel like a box that closed us in, but something we could grow into that was liberating. The sense of self, this sense of the earth humaning that she would liberate in a space when she would speak was nothing short of genius. The emotional welcome that many of us would experience in a space, either with her in a space that was offering this body of work that she synthesized, the Work That Reconnects, and the both permission and groundedness that I feel like so many of us who were kind of reveling in this work, we're almost like training in, how to be able to witness suffering, feel our empathic pain, and move towards it rather than away, to learn to become unafraid of it, to see suffering and move towards it. That in and of itself is a directional, is a direction, a lot of folks might see suffering and go the other way. But I think she would mirror that part of us that would see suffering and actually have an instinct to move towards it and okay, how do we move towards this in a way that is life affirming, that is calling of community, that wraps us together? And just, there's so many more things, but just the eternal cheerleader. I mean, the eternal cheerleader, just the way she would even just move her arms and, her gasp, and, the way that she would, even now, I could see her looking at all of us going, oh, those are my friends. Those are my precious ones. My precious one. That phrase that she would say to so many of us. So I just will close with singing a little bit of a song that she really loved. This song is called The Rising Sun, and it's by Lydia Johnson. It gives the earth back to so many of us, which, as you know, was one of her favorite topics. Let me just get this note. Yeah, and just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We will be singing and living thank you for the rest of our lives as we find each other and hold each other in these times and go, all right, come on. I'm arm in arm with you. Let's go. Let's do this. The rising sun greets my face with love and remembers me. The rising sun greets my face with love and remembers me. The moon and stars, they know my name. I belong here. I will grow strong here. The rising sun greets my face with love and remembers me. The moon and stars, they know my name. I belong here. I will grow strong here. I belong here. I will grow strong here. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank
Mm.
you.
Thank you, precious Lydia. So I invite us to take a little pause and sink into our hearts. And I have two prompts, two questions, which you can contemplate if you'd like, and even share in the chat. It occurs to me it could be a lovely gift to share with the whole list at the end when we send the recording out, and to send it to Peggy and Jack. And so here are the two questions that bubbled up for me. One way that Joanna's life has touched your heart. One way Joanna's life has touched you. inspired you, uplifted you. And the second question, if you wish, what does Joanna's life inspire you to move towards? Is there anything in her life right now, in this moment, that's she, her essence, her soul, her spirit, is magnetizing you into? What is she inspiring you to be, to do, to enact right now, today? I'll just take a minute in silence. You can share something that arises in the chat. And in about a minute, we'll have a video of Rising Appalachia, who made a video for this event. So you'll see that, and you can write if you wish during that period.
Hey y'all, it's Leah and Chloe, Rising Appalachia, and it's a real big honor for us to be able to send some songs out for the beloved work and world of Joanna Macy, and it's been a tremendous honor to be part of her studies and the incredible wide community that she has gathered in her vast life. So.
We're going to share a song we wrote inspired by her. Rilke translation of I Live My Life in Widening Circles. So we wrote this song, Wider Circles, and it's become one of our favorite songs to sing, and quite a beautiful thought process to think about how many of our circles are widening and opening and including all sorts of different people. So to Joanna's big new circle in the sky.
Yeah.
Cheers, y'all. 5, 6, 7, 8.
We are moving in our wider circles. We are opening our circles. We are moving in our wider circles. We are opening our circles. We are moving in our wider circles. We are opening our circles. Oh, we are moving in our wider circles. We are opening our circles. nature, it's always round. Like nature, it's always round. We are moving in a wider circle. We are opening our circles. Oh, we are moving in a wider circle. We are opening our circle. We are moving in a wider circle. We are opening our circle. We are moving in a wider circle. We are opening our circle. Rest in power, Joanna.
Thank you, Rising Appalachia. This beautiful, beautiful piece. And just taking another moment to relish the silence and stillness, and then we'll have Drew speak or recite some beautiful poetry next. We'll leave the chat open for a couple more minutes in case you want to make a contribution, but then we'll shut it off so that you can give your full attention to Drew's poetry.
Are you ready for me, Jonathan? I'm so moved to be with all of you, and I'm going to share some thoughts and then read a poem that was directly inspired by Joanna and her deep time exercises. But first, I'm just going to read a couple of paragraphs from a tribute to Joanna that I posted to Substack. The first time I saw Joanna Macy, on a cool Seattle night in October 1990, she was standing on stage in a dark church with a giant glowing earth behind her, haloed by the circle of our sacred planet, a murmuration of cloud and color, shimmering with life, its alchemist oceans turning sunlight into species. Joanna Macy looked a bit like an ancient priestess, but her words addressed the urgency of now. At one point, she turned to this photograph of Earth and, contrasting this experience with the Christian church going of her upbringing, she said, "I want you to know what it feels like tonight to be in a space like this and see on a screen the image of our planet, our home." Her words rang in the space. An indigenous man from the Chinook tribe who had spoken earlier responded, "Aho." For those of us alienated from the cosmological wellsprings of existence, to hear Joanna Macy speak even once is to be offered a new understanding of Earth, of self, of home. "I hope you were looking at those pictures as if, oh, brothers and sisters," she effused. "I hope you were looking into it as if you were looking into a mirror and saying, oh, that's how I look like from space." This is what you look like from space. In the 35 years since this night, I have never forgotten the eco satori that flashed through my body-mind at that moment, when Joanna stood silhouetted by the radiant earth and told me, that is what you look like from space. The Apollo missions as selfie stick, the blue marble as the ultimate group portrait, all of our triumphs and all of our tragedies, she continues, all our individual gifts and failures flickering there, reflected there. I realized in an instant that I scarcely understood what Earth was, that I could hardly begin to fathom what Earth means. Like the first rush of an oncoming psychedelic, I shivered at the insight that humanity, like all beings, is a function of the Earth, an expression of, a mode of, a dream of the Earth. that the planet is the ultimate expression of sacredness, of course, and creativity and mystery. At the end of this keynote speech, several of us were chatting with Joanna when the cosmologist Brian Swim suddenly approached, 6 feet tall, and he stopped a few feet from Joanna and he raised up the palms of his hands as if he were palpating the invisible pulses of soul force. And he said, the energy, the energy. And we were all just cracking up. It's a classic Brian Swim moment. You know, he was lifting up something that's so profound and yet making it hilarious as he did so. You know, to me, Joanna is a prophet of the ecological apocalypse, a Micah or Moses of the meta crisis, the bodhisattva of the biosphere. Joanna understood and honored the power of language. She used language that was at once poetic, mythic, and prophetic, using evocative phrases such as deep ecology, deep time, thinking like a mountain, towards a council of all beings, guarding the poison fire, the monastery at 3 Mile Island, deja vu from the future. You are 15 billion years old. Earth is what you look like from space, the interdependence of all phenomena, despair and empowerment work, the truth mandala, the work that reconnects, the ecological self, from ego self to eco self, the great unraveling, the great turning. So in honor of Joanna's poetic genius, I want to share this poem that, like I say, it was influenced and inspired by my mentor, Thomas Berry. It was inspired by David Ulansey and his thinking on the mass extinction crisis. There's even a line in here inspired by my brother, Matthew Fox, who would talked about the flesh of the cosmos, and the flesh of the stars. But this is some of you have heard this before, but in honor of Joanna and her direct influence on this poem with her deep time work. This is called Hieroglyphic Stairway. And after, I'm just going to come back with one final thought after the poem. It's 3:23 in the morning, and I'm awake because my great-great-grandchildren won't let me sleep. My great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the planet was plundered? What did you do when the earth was unraveling? Surely you did something when the seasons started failing, as the mammals, reptiles, birds were all dying. Did you fill the streets with protests when democracy was stolen? What did you do once you knew? I'm riding home on the Colma train. I've got the voice of the Milky Way in my dreams. I have teams of scientists feeding me data daily and pleading. I immediately turn it into poetry. I want just this consciousness reached by people in range of secret frequencies contained in my speech. I am the desirous earth, equidistant to the underworld and the flesh of the stars. I am everything already lost. The moment the universe turns transparent and all the light shoots through the cosmos, I use words to instigate silence. I'm a hieroglyphic stairway in a buried Mayan city, suddenly exposed by a hurricane. A satellite circling Earth, finding dinosaur bones in the Gobi Desert. I am telescopes that see back in time. I'm the precession of the equinoxes, the magnetism of the spiraling sea. I'm riding home on the Colma train. With the voice of the Milky Way in my dreams, I am myths where violets blossom from blood, like dying and rising gods. I'm the boundary of time, soul encountering soul and tongues of fire. It's 3:23 in the morning and I can't sleep because my great-great-grandchildren ask me in dreams, what did you do while the earth was unraveling? I want just this consciousness reached by people in range of secret frequencies contained in my speech. And just one final thought. So at the conclusion of this keynote speech at the Earth and Spirit Conference, the first night I met Joanna 35 years ago, She ended her speech with these words. She said, "Do you feel the promise of this time unfolding? And then if you feel that communion, that community with each other now and with those gone and those present, that makes the sense of community so strong, so real that whether we make it or not, whether our efforts to heal our world are going to succeed or fail, we still live then in so rich a community that the most obvious and accurate word for it is love. And that in itself is a communion. That in itself is an awakening. That in itself is enough." And then she spoke of the etymology of the word apocalypse and concluded, "Oh, we're going to be revealed. And this time we can be revealed as to who we really are." She took a long pause, and then she let out a whooshing exhalation, formed her breath into a spiral, almost like a spell, then said, "Who we really are. The awakened power of love and our planet." And I bow to that, brothers and sisters. Joanna Macy, the energy.
You're muted.
The constant unmute thyself. Thank you, Drew. Lovely to hear that poem always. Oh, I might start crying right at the beginning. I'm Constance Washburn, and I'm zooming in from Nevada City, California, the Sierra foothills, the home of the Nisenan people, and where my grandchildren live, which is why I'm here. So I'm so grateful for Joanna and the work, and I really want to honor her creativity. I think of the basket of the work that reconnects as a tapestry, a shimmering net that she's woven in Buddha Dharma, systems theory, deep ecology, indigenous and shamanic wisdom, with lots of poetry and theater and community activism and the interconnected collaborative processes. And I feel so blessed to be part of taking that basket forward, keeping to move that net out into the world. I'm one of the founding members of the Work That Reconnects network and co-director of the Spiral Journey, which is a training program, and the Work That Reconnects. And we're continuing to weave that basket. And Joanna was so generous in making that basket open source so people can be empowered to grow it and change it and spread it. And it's going all around the world. And last night, when I was thinking about this talk, I had the sense for head right here, kind of going, go, you got it, you can do it. I met Joanna 30 years ago at the Headlands Institute overlooking the Pacific Ocean in a workshop for 50, 60, 70 people. It was a big workshop. And the wind was blowing through and the ocean was roaring. And Joanna, in her goddess self and expert facilitator, was moving us all through and into that deep love of the earth and into our deep souls and into our grief. And the creativity and passion she guided that group with, I felt I had my fierce fairy godmother who had clunked me over the head and given me my marching orders for the rest of my life, which was to do this work. And so many people have found this work and found how those different threads can weave them into a whole that they can use to take healing action for the earth in lots of different ways. I had been doing theater, and I did theater because I gave up on science, because science no one was paying attention to the science. It's been there for a long time. And theater and the arts change people's lives. So when I saw this wild woman modeling what it was like to be creative, spiritual teacher, activist, while being a mother and a wife and a scholar and very human, I became a Joanna groupie. Fortunately, I lived in the Bay Area and was able to go to lots of workshops and intensives. And I started assisting, and I integrated my Work That Reconnects into my work at the Agricultural Land Trust and Marin Organic. And that's one of the things that's so brilliant about the work is that it's adaptability. And Joanna adapted the work constantly and often came up with practices and ideas on the fly in the middle of a workshop or intensive, which sometimes made it a little difficult for those of us who were trying to keep things on schedule or on time. But one intensive, which is the story I'm dying to tell, was the creation of the Intergalactic Council. So she came up to me and she said, we're going to have the Intergalactic Council come visit tonight. They're going to land on top of the hill inside the temple structure up there. And they've come down to see what's happening on Earth because they've heard through the intergalactic grapevine there may be some problems down here. So they're coming to see if they can help. So I want you, Constance, to gather a group of people together to be that intergalactic council and get some costumes and some lights and get up to the top of the hill and set it up, and then the council will come down. And I'll keep everybody else down here and till it's dark, and then we'll bring them up to the council. So she knew I had a theater background, so this was just my thing. And she had this incredible knack. I've seen her do it over and over with so many people, empowering their gifts to come forward. So the Intergalactic Council happened. We had costumes and lights, and it was amazing. And the people came up. But what was truly magical was Joanna's trust in emergence, and that what emerged out of this ritual event was the humans and the Galactic Council co-created spontaneously a birth canal. And everybody we created with legs when people are holding them apart, and we climbed through this birth canal and out the other side into the great turning, into the going forth, which was just what that group needed at that moment to emerge into something new, into the great turning. And it was so incredibly powerful, and just teaching me to trust emergence. I'm a little controlling, so I sometimes like to make it go my way. So that was such a teaching. That I want to leave us with the image of three little old ladies sitting on Joanna's sofa. I got to see Joanna and visit a few days before she passed. Well, not before she passed, but before she fell. And Celie was there, and Joanna was just beaming love. I mean, ready to go into the emergence, to the mystery of what was coming next, and be able to sit there and hold her hand. And Celie was there, and we just felt so much love and so much joy. We were happy. Here we are looking at all the horrors in the world, and that we can be happy and sit with that, knowing that our love for the earth was greater than our fear. So thank you. And blessings, Joanna. Gratitude, gratitude. Love you. Miss you.
Hi. I'm so touched by what everyone is saying, and by the power of Joanna's spirit that's here with us. I had the opportunity to go and sit with her body in those 2 days after Joanna died. And I just want to tell you about that in case there were some of you that didn't have that opportunity. I didn't introduce myself, but my name's Jack Cornfield, and I've known Joanna for decades, and she has been a bodhisattva inspiration. So I got to the house, and there were a lot of people there, some milling about on the front sidewalk, and then when you got ready to go up, even before you went up the steps to get to the porch, there was two people there, who greeted you and kind of whispered in your ear and talked about the sacredness of going and being in the presence of Joanna, or how we were holding this. It was all made into a beautiful ritual, and you climbed the steps and you get to the porch, and there were others with candles in, and they smudged you and blessed you. And then you went inside, and there were candles all the stairs up. And at the top, someone greeted you in a kind of temple-like way with their own mantra and said, this room is for meditation if you want to sit quietly with Joanna's spirit. In this room, people are taking time to tell Joanna stories. And then when you're ready, a few at a time can go and sit with her body. So I did those things. You can feel the whole house turned into this temple of ritual. And then I went in to sit with her, and there was a big basket of flower petals, and people had covered her body with flower petals. You could take a handful and cover her body. She was lying there. And I sat with her for a little bit, and then I did some Buddhist chanting, some from the Tibetan Book of the Dead, O nobly born, remember who you really are, let go into the clear light. The thing is, Joanna was already the clear light, so she said, yeah, she knew that. And I did a blessing chant, Chapitio, Vivachantu, Sapporo, Ko, Vinasatu, Made Pawadwantarayo, Sukiti Kayu Koboa, Abiwatana Sile, Sanichang Udabachai no. Like the waters that rain down and nourish every part of the earth and gather in the rivulets and go into the great oceans, like the moonlight that shines equally on all things and all beings, so may the goodness of your life and the goodness of life itself and all your good deeds gather together into this ocean of blessings and spread across the world and bring benefit and health and well-being and joy to all that lives. So we did that. And of course that was Joanna's life, really, as a bodhisattva. And then I sat and I just listened. And I just turned 80. And after about a minute of quiet or two, I can't say she turned to me, but she sort of did, and she said, "Hey, that's nothing. You got to keep going. You were thinking of pulling back. Just keep doing it." Okay, Joanna. And she said it. She also said it with humor because she had so much humor. And even changing the world was not out of guilt or out of fear, but it was out of that humor, that love. She said, "You got to keep doing it." Okay, Joanna. I got the message. I'll keep doing it. I went down the back steps, and in the yard, people were cooking and they were making music. It was, as it should be, a big celebration. And I started to talk to folks, and people who were close to her were telling me stories of how much she loved everything. That Joanna loved food, and they were taking her out to different kinds of restaurants, and she loved to cook. That she loved art, and that she loved nature. We all know this, in the various places in the world they had gone with her. She loved sex. She loved music. She loved, she was a lover. She loved community. All of those things. And I just took it in and felt the gratitude of being in the presence of Joanna, because her presence was always so powerful, but now was a presence collectively. The next day, I went into Whole Foods and I was looking around. I was going to buy this big chocolate thing, but I thought, nah, for my diet and what's, what I should do, maybe I shouldn't. And Joanna said, get it and eat it. I said, okay, Joanna. And I bought it. And then the next day, I was a little bit tired. I've been going out and standing at the freeway exit with a big sign, no genocide and no stealing of our children from the streets and stuff like that. I was a little like, maybe I should take a rest. Joanna says, get out there and go do it and have a good time. And all of a sudden, I realized that it's not quite Jiminy Cricket, but I have Joanna Macy here on my shoulder as a muse. And if I have any doubt about how to live, Joanna speaks up. And it's one thing I could have the Dalai Lama, but he's like so exalted. Joanna is so immediate and filled with connection and love and wise and practical and all the things that we've heard. And I'm telling you these stories not so much to tell you the stories, but to say that you can have Joanna. She's here for you. And she will, as she serves and guides and inspires me now, she will answer you. She will support you. She's with you. Joanna, dear, what can I say? I love you, we love you, you love us. All of that's true. The Bodhisattva spirit doesn't die, cannot die. And may all who remember her, may all who hear her name, may all who even hear that such a being exists, may they all be blessed and awakened to love Joanna's great and true message. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. What a gift to hear your encouraging words and for all of us to hear from each other. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Kaza, and I greet you from Portland, Oregon, the confluence of the Willamette and Columbia rivers and the native lands of the Multnomah, Clackamas, Clawiwalla, and Cascade bands of Chinookan peoples, and also the Tualatin band of Kalapuya, and the home of salmon, beaver, bear, raven, many other incredible friends and beings. Well, many of us in this gathering have been moved by Joanna's words, her writing, her speaking, videos of talks, or in real-time teachings. And for some of us, the quality of her voice is a very intimate knowing, a deep familiarity. As I write this and think of her wanting to focus right in on that voice, I see her in my mind's eye as Drew conjured her on a stage, a big audience full of anticipation. She gathers herself up and stands tall, wearing some amazing outfit and beautiful earrings, and then takes a very deep breath. And her presence fills the hall before she's even spoken. And then her words pour forth with clarity and power, a sense of urgency in the midst of deep time. Just beautifully evoked by Drew. So let me ask, what is it we are hearing in that powerful voice? It is a voice of agency and meaning making, of encouragement, of love and resistance, a voice of transmission, a call for awakening. In the last few years, I worked very closely with Joanna to refine her words and to bring the words of others to her in the tribute volume, A Wild Love for the World. Meeting in her living room month after month or by Zoom week after week, I'm telling you, we reviewed every sentence, every word in her writing. I was impressed by her skill in wordsmithing, her poetic sense, that each word carried weight and should be chosen carefully. As we worked on the 30th anniversary edition of World as Lover, World as Self, I could feel her deep training in right speech and her great care in speaking in her own true, authentic voice. Now, underlying all of Joanna's words and teachings was her root understanding of Buddhist principles. We know this. They point to liberation from suffering. And we know how, with her great empathic heart, she resonated with the earth's suffering and amazingly excluded nothing from consideration. So, that powerful voice, with that voice, she invited awakening to this suffering through wisdom and compassion. Her genius, though, and her original, very original framing of these principles birthed new words for the Western world. She asked us to ponder the idea of the ecological self and all of its myriad non-dual, non-linear, holonic, profound implications. The phrase became a koan, a charged challenge to the dominant paradigm of hyperindividualism, which we suffer from. An opportunity for awakening from ego-centered views to grasp the jeweled miracle of mutual causality and Indra's net. Penetrating this koan offered a path to wisdom insight into the true nature of reality, which of course she wanted us all to understand. But what then? With such a realization, she urged us to take up the bodhisattva call to compassionate action. As Jack expressed, I have heard that Jiminy Cricket voice myself in the last few weeks. At every retreat and workshop, Joanna would speak the prophecy of the Shambhala warrior, her compelling voice, a channel of transmission from ancient texts. She named this warrior the Ecosattva, another new word, one who travels on emotionally perilous terrain, guided by the infinite wellspring of compassion. Two of her many new words to light the path forward, new words to shape what could emerge out of this awakening, this call to action. Joanna's gift was, a gift she honed over time, from early training in Lycée High School to undergraduate studies at Wellesley College, into graduate school at Syracuse. Her writing was shaped by strong and good mentors and certainly refined by editors. I will testify to that. So I would invite you, if you haven't, to read my favorite of her books, her PhD thesis, with the intense title, Mutual Causality in Buddhism and General Systems Theory. Each paragraph and chapter is a beautiful testimony to her care with words and philosophical clarity. Now, Joanna could have easily taken her powerful intellectual voice into the academy, but as we well know, she was impelled into the work of deep ecology, of speaking for Earth. Luckily, this freed her voice from stilted convention, and she quickly began writing these wildly adventurous and imaginative guided meditations, complete with poetic phrasing for very evocative and, dare I say, theatrical delivery. With those pauses between words that just hung in open space, she opened up a big realm for deeper reflection and invited epiphanies of understanding. Like a skilled preacher, Joanna chose her words carefully, and like a prophet, she spoke of a vision of what could be in the great turning. Now, I'm speaking to you as a teacher myself, and as such, I studied Joanna's voice, how she used it to get people's attention, to keep them engaged, to lead them purposefully to a place of learning. Now, her lectures on systems theory and other topics were tight and well prepared. She totally knew what she was talking about. But her strong suit was a deep and intuitive, trusting sense of how to create a fertile learning space. And she did that using her voice to guide others in collaborative settings, to bring forward each other's voices. Now, some have held her as a role model or ideal, but it was not her intention to become a guru. Always, as Constance said, she wanted to give the teachings away, to share them freely, to support the voices of others. She knew how much was needed to turn the tide of destruction on earth, and she believed that everyone had potential to be part of this great turning. So I hear her voice very strongly, speaking right here in my ear, a little bit gravelly, but full of lightness and also seriousness, kind of all at once. At any moment, she might break into a full-throated laugh or issue a sharp call to action, very sternly. Joanna's voice was one that reached forward to hold your attention. It invited relationship. It offered curiosity. And always with that voice, she was seeking the right words to express the heart of the matter. So as a writer, I am indebted to her for her loyalty to clarity and her integrity in wordsmithing. And I hear her in my mind evoking confidence in emergence. And this is what I carry forward as my form of active hope from Joanna. Whatever the state of our situation, something fresh is emerging. Look there. Listen closely. Dearest Joanna, what a great honor it has been to be moved by your words across these past decades. Fierce, bodhisattva warrior, you have summoned us to do the work that is needed. There you stand, earth as witness, with your open heart and shining mind, fearless in the call to care for earth. So for me, and I think thousands of others, you have been a beacon of courage and compassion in very challenging times. Thank you for your words. Thank you. You're a treasure of a lifetime.
Well, it's been a beautiful 2 hours of sharing, remembering, celebrating, grieving. And I want to say thank you to all the speakers today and singers, poets, and Jonathan for calling us all together. With a special kudo to Joanna's daughter and son. I just love those stories. I had no idea that you guys grew up with a baboon in Lagos, Nigeria. I want to hear the rest of that story. How does it end? So, the 20th century historian Arnold Toynbee once wrote that the greatest event of the 20th century will be the coming together of Buddhism and Christianity. Well, the friendships of Catholic monk Thomas Merton, Buddhist monks Thich Nhat Hanh and Dalai Lama, both friends of Joanna, and of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., bear testimony to that. But Joanna Macy celebrated her own marriage, not only of Buddhism and Christianity, but of science and cosmology, and indigenous wisdom and goddess wisdom, and so much more. When I first met Joanna about 40 years ago, I was moved by our discussion on deep ecology, and I really pushed her on where that phraseology came from. In that ecology, she said, isn't just about a political struggle, an economic struggle, but it has a spiritual dimension to it. And I was so taken by that I created a word myself called deep ecumenism. And just borrowed and gave explicit acknowledgement to Joanna that it wasn't enough that religions get together and read position papers at each other and theology papers at each other. We have to enter a new era where spirituality, the wisdom of all the world traditions, comes together. The best of them, the depth of them, the mystics and the prophets and the forgotten ones, and especially the forgotten wisdom women mystics. And so I called it deep ecumenism. And I frequently observed Joanna's deep ecumenism when we did workshops together in many places around the world. In Finland, Scotland, for example, she and Fran were returning home from Chernobyl, their first visit to Chernobyl. And for a whole week, we did an Easter together. And on Good Friday, we created with the group, of course, 14 Stations of the Cross out in the howling sands with the howling wind of northern Scotland. And each group, small group, created a station such as Gaia's suffering, or the suffering of women, or the suffering of gay and lesbian people, and so forth. It was a very powerful event for everybody. And of course, a ritual of Council of All Beings, also designed by John Seed together. Of course, I was there on numerous occasions when people were so moved, putting on masks to speak to the humans, masks of other beings that were suffering from our eco-crisis. In Munich together, we taught a workshop on despair and fear and action for justice. At the University of Creation Spirituality and elsewhere, we dialogued on the cosmic Christ and the Buddha nature. And these joint teachings that are efforts, common archetypes to name the sacredness of all beings, the sacredness of the universe itself, the sacredness of our Mother Earth, the pattern that connects the human psyche to the sacred cosmos. And of course, in her movement, we've heard of today, the Work That Reconnects. Many of you people are workers in that movement. She tells us deep things by the title alone. First, it is work. It is inner work. And ourselves, our inner selves. And it is work with science and with the news of interdependence, deep time, deep caring, real compassion, and systems theory. Even to talk about reconnecting is to confess that we have become disconnected as a culture and as a species from the rest of creation, from what Hildegard had Bingen called the web of creation, way back in the 12th century, the web of creation. Disconnected from ourselves and from one another, and what Pope Francis called savage capitalism that disconnects us from one another. The Dalai Lama said, we can do away with all religion, but we can't do away with compassion. Compassion is my religion. Compassion was Joanna's religion too. She talks about the spiral of the work that reconnects, the spiral of the work that reconnects in 4 successive movements. And this spiral correlates exactly with what I have called the 4 paths of creation spirituality. Path 1 is gratitude. If the new creation story from science about how we arrived in a universe 13.8 billion years in the making does not fill us with gratitude, what can? What can? We deserve to go extinct if we cannot fill our hearts and souls and professions and schooling and religions with that gratitude, which has a whole new dimension to it thanks to science's facts and pictures pouring in daily from Webb telescope to awaken us to this reality. The second step she calls honoring our pain for the world. The first step is the via positiva, gratitude. Meister Eckhart said, if the only prayer you say in your whole life is thank you, that would suffice. So the via negativa is honoring our pain for the world, going into silence, going into suffering, going into brokenness, going into despair. Like Joanna taught, when your heart breaks, the whole universe can pour through. It's a moment of enlargement. As someone cited her 82-year-old mother just recently in the presence of Joanna Macy, a moment of enlargement. She offered so many of those moments. The third step is seeing with new eyes in Joanna's language, seeing with new eyes. That's the via creativa. That's our creativity that is born, where we give birth out of the darkness, out of the emptiness, out of the brokenness. Meister Eckhart says, I once had a dream, even though a man, I dreamt I was pregnant with nothingness. And out of this nothingness, God was born. All kinds of things get born out of our pain. And the fourth movement is going forth, as she says, and that we call the via transformativa. Now, I was invited to accompany Jennifer Barrett's son to give a blessing, Joanna, on her deathbed. Jennifer sang her perfect song for the occasion called Praises. And there is a line in her song that says, if I die tomorrow, I want to hear one word, praise for the world. And when she sang that for Joanna, Joanna just lit up. She started moving her arms. She was directing the music. She knew the song very well. She told people this was her favorite song. And she had a big smile on her face. Then I offered a prayer that all the light of the Dalai Lamas through the centuries, through history, would welcome her, and Buddha's light, and the light of Jesus, and St. Francis, and Hildegard. And when I mentioned Hildegard, Joanna physically responded. And I spontaneously added the word lion, Hildegard the lion. It just came to me at that second. And then I spoke of Joanna as a lioness as well. And she hugged me very fiercely. Later I learned that the Buddha once said, quote, the proclamation of the truth of the Dharma is as fearless as a lion's roar, is as fearless as a lion's roar. Joanna was a lion, like Hildegard. She was fearless, and she roared, but she also played, as we've learned so viscerally this afternoon. The Buddhist magazine calls itself Lion's Roar. And they talk about themselves this way, the fearlessness and confidence needed to present the profound truth of the Dharma by way of any and all skillful means. As has been said, Joanna called them so many skillful means, so many playful means. Whenever we did workshops together, as someone said, there were all these surprises and all these activities that often appeared on the spot. But this was Joanna's gift, a fearless and confident vocation, where she dared to speak about and call others to move into, as someone said, toward despair and toward fear and toward the suffering of the world and not away from it. Joanna accomplished in her long and loving life what she accomplished was very much in the spirit of Hildegard and Francis, the Buddha, and Jesus. Once when I conducted a workshop in Santa Monica, California for a weekend, they put me up in a Buddhist home. And they said, you're going to have the place to yourself, except in the morning, a group might come and chant. And sure enough, the next morning about 4, I heard chanting. I woke up to Buddhist chanting in the living room, and it was beautiful. Then I went back to sleep, and I had a dream about Buddha and Jesus. And this is what the dream taught me. The Buddha lived this full life. He was a prince, he was a husband, he was a father, and he was a wanderer and a seeker and a beggar. And he had his enlightening experience and became a great teacher under the Buddha tree. And he died serenely around the age of 83, around my age. Jesus, on the other hand, got himself killed at 30 by the empire. So Buddha teaches us holy patience and serenity, and Jesus teaches us holy impatience in the pattern of his prophetic ancestors. And today, as a species, we need the coming together of both holy patience and holy impatience if our species and millions of others are going to survive on a healthy earth. Joanna taught us both. Just a few years ago, I was part of a conference in Berkeley sponsored by the Sierra Club. And first, a scientist spoke about the environmental crisis and what we can do about it. Then a vegan activist spoke. And then I was assigned to talk about Pope Francis' encyclical Laudato Si on the environment, which, by the way, was written, 80% of it, by a student of mine from my CCS. And then there was a Q&A, and Joanna, in her 90s, walked into the room late during the Q&A. She picked up the mic, and she declared, "Isn't it wonderful to be alive today when so many important decisions are being made? What an honor to be alive at this moment in 13.8 billion years of history." And there had been a lot of depression and a woe going on in the room until this 93-year-old walked in and just took it all over. She was full of vim, vitality, enthusiasm, what Hildegard of Bingen called viriditas, greening power, the sap, she says, of the Holy Spirit, and joy. Joanna had all of that, and that was the last public moment I experienced with Joanna. So I say, as we all do, thank you, Joanna, for your generous giving and fierce resistance, your act of hope and thinking like a mountain and honoring Gaia as your and our lover. May we carry your lion energy wherever we go, wherever we protest and interfere and birth alternatives. May all creatures be happy. May all creatures be saved. May all creatures be acknowledged as original blessings. And may we all be grateful for our existence and act like it. Amen.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Matthew. Again, just taking a moment in the silence and stillness to connect with our own bodies and hearts, with Joanna and with each other. Before we end with a poem, from Jane Hirschfield. I will attempt to follow in Joanna's path whenever we taught. Someone put it, offer a sharp call to action. What came to me, in addition to doing this gathering, was to ask Peggy Macy, Joanna's daughter, and Anne, her longtime partner in work and assistant, for a number of organizations that Joanna either inspired or actually created outright or co-created. And it's my honor to invite you to explore these different organizations and to support them. I'm going to read 8 of them out loud. I'm not going to describe them, but I will, if you're listening in the recording, you can click below and you can go to Active Hope training and click it and discover for yourself what Joanna and her colleague created. So here are 8 of them in alphabetical order that Peggy and Anne offered. Active Hope Training, Canticle Farm, InterHelp, the Joanna Macy Center for Resilience and Regeneration at Naropa University, the Mindful Living Revolution, the School for the Great Turning. Lydia Violet, who founded and co-founded that, was one of the speakers today. And then the Work That Reconnects network. And you heard from one of the founding weavers, Constance Washburn, today. So here is my direct call to action. Check out in the links below, or if you're on this email list, I'll send 1 or 2 of these a day for the next week, and then it'll be done, with an invitation to take 5 minutes and look at the fruit that Joanna Macy's deep-rooted tree blossomed into the world. To join something, to enact one of the things that these organizations are standing for and inviting you into. Join their email list, become a member. And then the financial piece. I was talking about the ruinous nature that capitalism can be, but there's also the wholesome financial support that we can offer. So I'm hoping we'll have at least 10,000 people come to the YouTube channel. And my invitation is, if you can afford it, $20. And if you can't, less or none. But if you can, choose one of these organizations. Review them. See what calls you to offer your support. And in this way, Joanna Macy's legacy is nourished by the collective. My organization, Purpose Guides Institute, doesn't get a penny, so it's easy for me to make this ask. It's just directly to these organizations. So I hope you'll read those emails, spend 5 minutes, and offer a donation if you can. It's a great way of thanking and honoring Joanna and your deep love, your endless activism for the world. She would sometimes consult with me. There was a map that a friend of ours, a mutual friend, created, the soul-centric developmental wheel, and she'd say, I want to consult with you about where I am on the wheel. I'm like, okay. Why are you consulting me? But all right. And she goes, I think maybe I'm at the last stage, stage 8, the elder in the mountain cave. And she'd explain, and I'd say, well, yeah, let me say a few things to you about it. And she'd go, oh, you mean I have to withdraw from the world and do a mountain cave and kind of, she goes, no, no, no. And she said, She says, I want to drive this car until the wheels fall off. I want to stay engaged. I'm like, well, that's the best place to be. You stay there. Boy, did she ever. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And please share this video widely. And I hope you feel Joanna's love at your back. And the confidence that she had in me and in really everybody she met to love without boundaries, actively. Thank you to all the folks who generously gave your time to speak today.
Thank
And
you,
we'll end
Jonathan.
with a poem from Jane. Right.
So I am filled to overflowing from all we have heard. And forgive me, my skylight has come on, and so my lighting is very peculiar. I was thinking, we aren't allowed to overflow. Joanna's invitation to us was only to become larger, large enough to hold the love, the grief, the embrace, the request of this world. And I've been weighing 3 poems that I could read, choosing between them, and almost arbitrarily, I'm going to read you the most recent one that I wrote. I had trouble finding the ending, and Joanna's spirit guided what is at least currently the ending. In the great emergency, when the day comes that it will be asked, if there are askers, in the time of the great emergency, what did you do? Someone will answer, if there is someone, if there are mouths and ears. In the great emergency, the leaders turned off the sirens. The scientists who studied the lake ice went out in winter to fish. Horses starved. Donkeys lived. Cassandra learned to play the piano. Still, there was beauty. Always there was beauty. It trembled. It held out to all beings, all being its strong hand. Thank you, everybody, for coming together today in Joanna's spirit and wisdom and heart.
Thank you, Jane. We're going to end the recording in 1 minute, and I invite everybody to unmute. If Marlena and Rachel, you can unmute us, and here's the invitation. If it's true for you, it's true for me. Just say, I love you, Joanna, and just send this up with hundreds of us to heaven. Here we go.
I love you, Joanna.
I love you, Joanna.
Love you, Joanna.
Offering you,
Joanna.
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 Gratitude.
Love you.
Love you, Joanna.